Recording. All right.
Hey,
Good morning.
good morning.
All right. So I will do a little bit introduction here.
Intro, okay.
Little intro. Good, is good boy. Good boy. That's the intro. That's the intro. So good morning, everyone here. I lost my voice a few days ago, so it's a bit hard for me to talk. But I didn't want to miss out on what I think interesting conversation. So I still want to bring it up too, and important topic too. So we'll have a chat here with Kelly from San Francisco. Kelly's a Ph.D. in psychology
Yeah.
and a therapist. You know what else?
Professor of transpersonal psychology.
Okay, that's cool. So why don't you introduce yourself better,
Okay.
and then we just take from there and see how we roll with it. So
Okay. Yeah. So I'm a clinical psychologist and psychedelic therapist and transpersonal psychology professor.
okay, that's good. So maybe we start from your path. Why did you go to study psychology, and then how that involved in what you're doing today?
Yeah, so I first was actually really interested in comparative religion. I'd been having strange experiences. I started having visions, having beings seemingly come into my dream space, teaching me things.
A little bit louder. Let's
Oh,
a bit
louder, yeah. Having beings like come into my dream space, teaching me things, and then if I'd become aware, the dream space would dissolve, and I'd have visions of seemingly usually like a silhouette of a face, things like that. So, so I'd been having visions of this face for about 2 years, and then I was reading a book. And then in the book, I turned the page, and then I saw the face I was seeing, and it was the yogi died in the 1930s, and he was teaching a totally different lineage of spiritual practice, but the same practice that I was practicing at the time.
Who was the guy?
His name was Surat Shabd Maharaj, or it was Sahabji Maharaj, and he taught Surat Shabd Yoga.
Okay.
That's what it was. So, because I was having those experiences, that was like late high school and college, I wanted to understand what was going on. And those experiences really confirmed to me that the universe is bigger than this materialist paradigm. And, yeah, so I was really passionate primarily about like spiritual seeking, spirituality, cross-cultural spirituality, things like that. And then my mom actually didn't think, I was majoring in religious studies, comparative mysticism, and my mom said like, that's not practical, what are you going to do with that? So I double majored in psychology. And once I was a senior, I found something called transpersonal psychology, which blends kind of cross-cultural mysticism, spirituality with modern psychology. So that's how I got into it.
So that's more interesting.
Yeah.
More life into it, you know?
Yeah.
So, and how that evolved?
So once I had those experiences, eventually I had an awakening experience in college. I was primarily living in like a theistic paradigm, and in the worldview I was sort of practicing in, you ascend into these subtler and subtler states of being and consciousness until you merge with God, basically. So that was my worldview, and then I had an awakening experience. It was like I was just reading a book, Siddhartha, and then it felt like someone like hit me in the back of the head, and then I saw that there's this timeless awareness behind my mind that in the moment I was like, oh, this is God, and I'm God, you're God, all beings are God. That timeless awareness that lives all beings, like penetrates everything, was my awakening experience. So from that point, I got really interested in more like non-dual traditions, Krishnamurti, Ramana Maharshi, this guy Adida, I don't know if you've heard of him, which all of those are more non-dual, and I got really into Buddhism as well. So, and then I sat at a retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh in Santa Barbara, and during that retreat I was like, whoa, this is something else. So I considered becoming a monk. So I went to France and Plum Village, and I was there for a little bit and decided, I want to still study psychology and be in the sort of modern world. So, but I did go to India, and I was studying with different gurus.
So you went to France to the monastery?
Yeah.
And what's the monastery?
Plum Village. So we're just practicing mindfulness like all the time there.
How long have you been there?
It was about 40 days.
Oh, okay.
And then after 40 days, I was like,
You understood that the monk, it's not your calling.
yeah, that wasn't my calling. Just to be a psychologist.
Yeah.
And thus I'm where I'm at. Well, to really blend the two.
Yeah.
My calling is really to blend modern psychology with
ancient knowledge.
Yeah,
You know?
with the cross-cultural spiritual tradition.
Okay. So what happened in India?
So I was just, I was spending time with different spiritual teachers. One was like Ramesh Balsekar, who's more of like a non-dual Advaita Vedantin. Different Tibetan Buddhists. I was staying at different monasteries. There were yoga and meditation centers. Just kind of like doing that thing, bopping around, hanging out with like spiritual teachers and stuff.
So how was the mixing of modern psychology with the Eastern tradition when you were there?
Well, they don't really do it, right? That's what I saw. It's either straight realization or psychology, but they weren't really mixing the two. And that's why I think that's needed, right? I think a deep understanding of modern psychology and a deep understanding of cross-cultural spiritual traditions is really what we need in the world right now, right?
And psychedelic experience on top.
Yeah, so I experiment a little bit with psychedelics in undergrad, mainly with mushrooms. All my experiences were very spiritual, completely spiritual, like ascending into light above, right? These sort of things, getting downloads, those sort of things. So, yeah, not till later, I would say, I got more deeply into the psychedelic work.
Okay, and then you left India, went back.
Then I went to just working for a while, and then eventually I went to grad school.
And then you got your PhD
Yeah.
later.
Yeah,
After
yeah.
all this journey.
After all of that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how was actually the study to get a PhD after all those experiences and gurus and babas and psychedelics, and then here you are in the school
Yeah.
doing that boring thing.
Well, my school wasn't boring.
Oh, because it was transpersonal.
Transpersonal. It's all experiential. So it's actually quite transformative. Like we'd have, most of our classes would be very experiential. So I really enjoyed it actually, because it's like, it's upheaving your psyche, right? It's like digging into the unconscious, and like you're doing all these different modalities, like Aikido. We did Aikido there. We did psychosynthesis, which is a more spiritually oriented psychotherapy. We did group process. We did a lot of like community stuff too. So it wasn't like boring academic head up education. It was like a whole being education. So it's actually really good because during that process I got exposed to so many different healing modalities, right? Body-centered psychotherapies, like spiritual psychotherapies, psychodynamic, psychoanalytic psychotherapies. So it's like I'm getting exposed to like everything out there, so that I'm looking for what kind of unifies these and how to use them skillfully with particular people, right? So that's really my thing, because even if something doesn't really appeal to me, there's certain personality types, right? Like, oh, this one's good for this person, right? So I'm like a
different modalities for different people.
Exactly.
So that all serves in your practice right now.
Yeah.
So maybe you tell us about your practice.
Okay. Yeah. So I do my own private practice, and I also work in a medical clinic where I work with addiction patients, but also we do ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. That's the psychedelic psychotherapy there. So, yeah, that's mainly my practice.
So maybe we can talk about the ketamine practice and how that helps people. Like, maybe a few examples and how that works, and
Yeah, totally. So what I've seen with the ketamine is that it can work similar, right? I don't think it's as powerful, right, as something like Huachuma or ayahuasca or something like that. But it can really open people up to larger dimensions of who they are. Right? So some people, and this is the tricky thing I think with psychedelics, you have the psychedelic, right? But that's interacting with a particular person, and then through that their consciousness opens up into certain realms. So some people with the ketamine, they can go more transpersonal, right? Universal oneness, right? Complete like dissolving of the ego, leaving their body. These are kind of common ketamine experiences. Other people that I've seen, it's more, it opens up their personal unconscious, so more biographical material comes up, right? Like traumas from 5 or 6. But the ketamine allows it. It's similar to MDMA in that sense. It's like the ketamine allows people the calmness of their nervous system so they can process through the traumatic memories.
Very similar to Huachuma.
Yeah, similar to Huachuma. I think in that sense the psychedelics have some similarities across the board, but obviously very different energies, right? But
So what would be the few examples of success helping people with traumas?
Yeah, so one patient had a history of like child abuse and also substance abuse issues. And with the ketamine, right, they're able to go to these child abuse memories and not get overwhelmed, not get like totally dysregulated, and just start processing there, right? So what happens with trauma, usually people have these traumas and they shut them out, and then they have all these weird symptoms, right? And they don't like fully connect the two. So then when trauma work, you actually go to the memories, you feel the feelings that weren't felt, and you create new meanings and things like that, and then the trauma is not so stuck, right? It starts reintegrating back into the personality. So it's not creating these weird symptoms or substance or alcohol use issues or use of things.
And ketamine is now legal there.
Yeah. Ketamine's legal
in a clinical setting.
Clinical setting, you have to have a doctor prescribe it, and then you can work with it. So you give them ketamine and you just talk. Yeah, basically.
And open them up and.
Depends how high the dose is. If the dose is higher, they don't usually talk. They're just. Yeah. But
you regulate the dose.
What's that?
Who regulates the dose?
Me and the doctor. We determine like, oh, should we go high dose or lower dose? Lower dose usually we talk. Higher dose we don't talk.
Always. It's very similar to how it's done here,
Yeah.
More medicine, no talking.
No talking. It's good enough.
Not talking. Okay, so you also mentioned in one of our conversation about you doing this therapy with dangerous criminals in jails.
Yeah. So I've worked in the criminal justice system. I've worked in what's called administrative segregation, which is basically the hole where people go when they're extremely dangerous or other people are trying to kill them, things like that. So
just like a place in the prison.
Yeah. So usually in the prison, people can go and do activities and things like that. But there, everyone's locked up, and when they're out of their cell, they're basically handcuffed. And then even when I did therapy with them, they would be in a cage. So it was kind of considered
that's
it's like the worst area.
It's the Cannibal Lecter
Yeah.
stuff. Did you see this kind of people there?
Mainly gang members, but I had one person that gave me that energy, and I was like, okay.
It's like, is this guy
It's
going to eat me here?
They're trying to manipulate you and stuff.
So how was your experience talking to this guy?
That guy?
He was like, what was your diagnosis of this guy first?
His diagnosis was an antisocial personality disorder.
So just dangerous to people, kind of.
Well, people who have that diagnosis, usually they just ignore the societal rules. They do whatever they want, right? This sort of thing. They're not necessarily dangerous, but they can be dangerous, right?
But what was the crime?
What was his controlling offense? I think I can share.
Yeah, we don't speak names.
Yeah, no names. Right? It was more, I think it was kidnapping and armed kidnapping. I don't know if he was robbing someone.
But was he in his mind? Was he a reasonable person you can talk to, or?
No, you could talk
oh.
to him. He's just. I didn't feel like I could trust him. So there's some people like that they're trying to manipulate you in some way, right?
But into what? He's already locked up. You're outside.
Yeah.
What is the manipulation about?
He wants to trick me into thinking he doesn't belong there.
So he can go.
Yeah.
It's a mistake.
Yeah.
But he committed a crime.
Yeah.
So you do belong there.
Yeah.
And how did it go?
Yeah.
How was the conversation?
With him, not that, couldn't really get anywhere. Because there has to be a basic, other clients there. There's basic trust, right? They're honest. They're like, oh, I messed up doing this, and I regret it, and they're really working on themselves. So those people
you can work
with, but if someone's just trying to manipulate you the whole time, there's no therapy that can be done. It's just a game
that they want to play.
They want to play a game, and then you just have to kind of not fall into their traps.
So what was your most scary therapy session with those guys behind bars?
Well, it wasn't a therapy session, but some people didn't want to be contacted, right? So they would just scream, acting really that.
Well, you're there to help them to.
They don't care.
It's just nothing.
There's some of those people were highly racist. Right. So there's different groups, and some groups are really racist
towards others.
Yeah.
So it's if you're not like them, no therapy.
Yeah.
But no therapy means more years behind bars. So
no,
where's the logic?
Not necessarily. Yeah, we just we want to make sure they're safe.
And other people too.
The suicide rate is really high in that area of the prison because, they're not getting out. They're not getting a lot of kind of contact.
Yeah, they're like being on a lockdown.
Yeah, lockdown. That's right.
We know how that feels.
Yeah.
I totally understand, man. Plus handcuffs. Not a good environment. So what was the most interesting conversation with one of those guys? Like, did you did you find anyone who actually wasn't crazy and who was actually a sane person who could be talked about, who was rational, who just messed up, but who could actually connect to you in a certain decent way?
Yeah.
You know?
I don't use the term crazy clinically, but most people I could talk to pretty well, right? But there's some people like stand out, like they're like on a spiritual path, right? Even there, actually, sometimes in an environment like that, just because you're isolated, right? You have a lot of time on your hands. People have like a kind of like an opening to that. So I remember several of the inmates. They had like they're exploring spirituality.
So you talk about spiritual stuff, consciousness,
teach right? Like prison, like meditate, right?
I mean, yeah. There's nothing else.
Nothing else to do, really.
That's
right?
it.
So some of them got really into meditation, right? Spiritual philosophy, things like that.
Like reading books and stuff.
Yeah. Because a lot of inmates there, because it's so boring, they do read a lot, right? They work out a lot and read a lot. So yeah, it's possible.
That's a stressful job. To spend some time in prison, man. Like, it's a very depressing environment to be there, even if you get out same day.
Yeah.
It's the energy of that is heavy.
Yeah, it's a different energy. But the interesting thing was when I was there, I'd feel the energy, and there was a strange lack of fear.
On which part? On whose part?
Like in the field.
There's no fear there?
It's weird. I don't know how to explain it. You would think there'd be a lot of fear because people are afraid of being attacked, things like that. But for some reason, I remember whenever I'd walk on the grounds and start going to work where I worked, just this, an odd feeling of a lack of fear. And I think that's probably the collective of the people there, because a lot of people with antisocial personality disorder, maybe narcissistic personality disorder, they don't have a fear of the breaking rules, right? There's just a fearlessness around some of that. So I think that's why you have a lot of people together. So then there's less fear as a community there, right? But
they don't have fear to be arrested for something.
Yeah.
Once in jail, man. They're already there.
Once you've passed a certain line, right? It's kind of there's not much further down to
it's
go.
It's the bottom there, okay. Let's just relax, meditate. Pop some iron, read some Buddhism. Time passes.
So some people go through transformations. Have you ever seen? Oh God, I can't remember the name of it, but it's about inmates, right, in prison, and they bring people from the public in, and then they do these intense men's group process where.
It's a movie you're talking about?
Yeah, it's a movie.
No, what's that?
I'll try to remember it later. It's really quite powerful, actually.
Did you, in your career, visit a mental asylum?
I've worked in what's called halfway houses, right? And that's when people are locked up in the hospital, but then they come out as a transition. So actually one of my first experiences in the mental health field was working with people who had schizophrenia and substance use or alcohol use issues. So this is before I even went to grad school. And at the time, actually, I was really interested in the notion of craziness because I knew some people that got that label weren't really crazy, right? They're kind of tapping in. So working there, I saw the differences because some people like quite lucid. They're tapping into like bigger realities, but then other people, they're paranoid, right, and they're delusional, so they're sick. So sometimes I think it's based in a person's individual imagination that gets projected out, but some other people, it's not that. They're tapping into bigger realms, right?
And they're rational.
They're fairly rational, and they can sort of like realize what they're in to some degree, right?
Yeah, I was interested in that too, you know, early on.
Yeah.
Kind of to better understand what's going on in their heads.
Yeah, totally. There's different versions of it, though, I would say. I think that's,
Definitely. It's like I had a very negative experience with someone many years ago, like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
With someone who I would diagnose as delusional paranoia.
Yeah.
That created a lot of problems for us.
Yeah.
I thought after this, I said, schizophrenia, you're not welcome here.
Yeah,
Sorry guys, go see
not,
professional help.
Yeah, it's not appropriate.
It's not,
They shouldn't be working with psychedelics.
Oof.
Or anything.
That was a serious problem, you know.
Yeah.
So how was your experience? Okay.
Yeah.
So how was the feeling to work in this mental institution? How was the energy there? Like, did you see more suffering than in prison among people?
Yeah, it's a different energy. So in prison, right, it's like people are fairly like lucid, rational, right, overall. But there, I think because people are so heavily medicated, I did feel this kind of like dead type energy, right? You mentioned the kind of like zombie feel. There's kind of like a zombie energy.
So it's very depressing.
It's more of like a depressed energy, right? And it's mainly because people are transitioning from the hospital, right? So they've just been kind of locked up, heavily medicated, and then they're transitioning out of that. So maybe later they won't be in that state, but then in that moment, right?
It's a very scary environment, you know.
I wouldn't say it's scary.
No, I mean, there is no way out. I mean, if you heavily medicated, it's like they don't let you to recover from that. I mean, you're always in a trance.
Yeah.
You know, there is no chance for you to even have a sober moment.
Yeah.
It's like, have you seen this movie with Jack Nicholson, The Flight, about the cuckoo nest?
Oh, yeah.
Is it like that?
No.
No.
That's kind of a dramatization of something.
Okay. It's a scary place to be. Because, like, in other countries, I don't know how in America, but like in Russia, you know, it's like they can lock you up there just for use of drugs.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like just to, you're not crazy, but you have substance abuse and you just end up in the in a mental clinic.
Oh, yeah.
And then you really go crazy there. I mean, they just jab you with all the stuff. I had a friend who just, just been in drugs and then just ended up there, and he was sharing the stories there. So pretty scary.
Yeah.
It's like you go there and that's it. It's like there is no God there. There is no mercy, man. It's like you wake up in the morning, you're just kind of coming out of it.
Yeah. That's what was his
it's like,
experience.
It's just like by miracle he somehow got out of there. He's like, oh my God, I thought I will really go mad.
Yeah. The mental health system needs to be reformed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's supposed to be
therapy.
Therapy,
You know.
rehabilitation, right?
But it's not rehabilitation when they just drag you down and.
Yeah. Oh yeah, if it's involuntary.
Of course, it's involved.
Yeah.
It's just the jack you with all the stuff. You know?
Yeah.
So, what's your take on the whole system? Like what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
But maybe we can, like the whole mental health system
Yeah.
in America.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what are the holes in your opinion?
Holes, yeah. I think it needs to be reformed, and I think that's what I'm interested in. Actually, is the reform of the mental health system. For one, the mental health system needs to have a bigger worldview, right? And that's where I think the different indigenous systems, right, different traditional healing systems, spiritual systems, integrating that into the mental health system, I think would be profoundly beneficial, right? Also, a lot of the mental health is very, fragmented and not that deep, right? So I think it needs to be more, integrated into kind of larger, more holistic type of view of each person, and then with that, integrating it with the modalities that really will serve that particular person. And I also think a big piece of it is so the mental health system overall holds an atheistic view that's inherited from the history of Western psychology, right? So even though the mental health system in general doesn't advocate any sort of spiritual or religious perspective, in a way, it's advocating for atheism, right? In a lot of ways, and I even see this, some of my work settings, there'd be ridiculing and kind of contemptuous comments about Jungian psychology or more kind of spiritually oriented psychologies, because it's counter to the mainstream view, right? So whenever you have a dominant view in any subculture, there's going to be minority views, and then those minority views are sort of denigrated, right? So you see it in the history of psychology. Even some of the diagnostic categories hold a lot of metaphysical assumptions about what is normal, or, right? These sort of things that are there's something called I think it's schizotypal personality disorder, and it's if you have telepathic experiences, right? That's a type of person.
Jesus, man,
right,
that's how you come up with this stuff?
Yeah, it's crazy, right?
I mean,
So that's crazy.
That's
right?
crazy. To come up with the stuff, it's crazy.
Yeah. So these metaphysical assumptions.
So any psychic ability.
Any psychic
assigned to that
ability,
group.
most likely, right? You go to a mainstream, not someone who's more spiritually.
But
right?
no mainstream
Say a
psychology.
mainstream atheist psychologist or mental health practitioner, and then say you or me or there, and
So we're what
schizotypal
personality disorder.
Yeah,
It's a disorder.
it's a disorder.
So I'm a disorder, and you're a disorder.
Yeah. According to that
So
view,
we need to be treated.
yeah.
According.
They would think
So what would be the treatment?
Well, personality disorders in general, they say it's very hard to treat.
So
But
how would
but
they-
the treatment, right? So here's the crazy part. The treatment would be to have our worldview reduced to the atheistic materialist
materialistic
paradigm,
atheism.
right?
That's it.
Yeah.
So that would be the
Yeah.
re-education. So
Yeah.
rehab for me and you.
Yeah.
If we would be
Yeah.
forcibly rehabilitated
Yeah.
by these people, it would be basically a hardcore brainwashing us into a very
Into that.
reductionist approach to
Yeah.
reality.
That's right.
That's it. Plus maybe some medication, some Prozac, Xanax. I mean, they would probably use something.
If we wanted that.
If we
Something.
if we would be too hard-headed, if we would be too argumental, they would have to use some kind of help.
In general, people won't force medication.
But this is crazy. So that's the mainstream view of anything that goes beyond the
surface.
Paradigm. You know? So
that's a problem because it's ethnocentric, right? Because if you look at the world's like cultures, most cultures believe in like spirits or spirit things beyond the physical, right? So that's one of my big passions, is to open up psychology more, because even with like say telepathy, say with remote viewing, there's ample scientific evidence that supports the existence of those capacities, right? There's a whole long history in like parapsychology of them doing like telepathy experiments. One with this thing called the Gonstead technique, where people put these these ping pong balls cut in half. You put them over your eyes, and you telepathically get information from another person. And they've done like meta-analyses over like many studies, and some of those studies, like the significance is way above like really mainstream studies that are accepted.
But they're not really debating that it's existing. They're just saying that it's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, they don't say it doesn't exist. They say, something is there, but it's a disorder.
No, they're saying something's there. They're not saying it's real. Yeah,
it's not real. It's just
they're projecting it out, right? So the argument that the mainstream psychological establishment is operating under is that it's coming from the individual mind being projected out, and is a confusion. Right?
On which part? On the part of the projector or projectee? Because if you receive that, then both of you crazy.
No.
You know?
They think it's the projector.
So no one there to receive that, because it's delusion. It's not real. You cannot reach other people with your delusion. It's in your head. So they don't believe in the projectee. They don't believe in the receiver.
Well, they're not looking at it like. To me, they're not looking at it scientifically. Because if you look at it scientifically, there's enough evidence to go like, okay, something's happening here. Some legitimate, telepathic type communication, right? Subtle energy, right? All of these things, those are capacities of the human, capacities
of the psyche.
But
which Jung was kind of.
Jung was aware of stuff.
He was aware of that, and that's
he debated that with Freud.
Yeah, and that's why he's very interested. It's interesting to read him versus Freud. I mean, it's just like
Freud's a classic reductionist.
It's like that's why I recommend people read the Red Book, which was published after Jung's death. I think it's the best book that just very easy to read, and it's just like there are no terminologies there and stuff. It's just like his relationship with Freud, and he just shows how dogmatic Freud was. And it's like you just see like, okay, well, if I vote here, if I get to vote here, I mean, I vote for this guy. It's like it's obvious. Like I would follow this guy, and kind of he's like a real real researcher into human psyche. That not just kind of human psyche here, but kind of in a larger context of history and traditions and stuff. It's like okay, that's the transpersonal psychology. Versus the other guy who is just very boring. It's like very like, I mean, you need to pay me money to read Freud, man. It's like, and even then, it's like, unless I have to have bills to pay, I mean, it's just like, so, and that's like a, archetype of psychology for the mainstream. Like not just him, but there are other people. But that's the archetype. It's like, that's what you get. If you go that way, that's what you become, Or this is what you get if you go this way. So the Red Book shows very clearly how they different, and It's like there is life here and there is lifeless here. There is no life in this teaching, you know what I mean?
Yeah, like
Dogma.
Freud's notion of the pinnacle of being a human was being an everyday neurotic. Right? That was his like peak state of like being a human. Right? We're young, right? It's kind of like tapping
Explorer.
into the collective unconscious,
Seeker.
accessing archetypes, right? Understanding like how archetypes manifest in different cultures. He had a notion of the objective psyche, right? Meaning the material world in his worldview is the objective psyche, right? And then you have the collective unconscious, and these archetypes are emerging from this kind of collective unconscious into our everyday realities in the objective psyche. So it's like a very holistic
The approach.
worldview. Yeah, very
Do you
spiritual.
think that Freud just couldn't see past his own neuroticism and suppressed sexuality, and he kind of got stuck in
I'm
the
sure.
state he was, and that's what he was kind of preaching, you know? It's like that's where he was.
Yeah, yeah. It's
You know?
everyone's like theories and books, right, are a reflection of the author, right? So we see that with Jung and Freud, right? Freud is reducing everything to these kind of inner conflicts, these sexualized conflicts, right? Because that's probably his reality, right? And there's elements of that in the human psyche, but if you reduce everything to that, that's a problem, right? There's a lot of other like aspects to being human, like even beyond Freud, that sort of school. Eventually, attachment theory is much more respected now, meaning like actually our human relationships are what motivate a lot of our right, wants and needs and personality patterns and that sort of thing. So even within like more psychoanalytic, psychodynamic schools, like you see a further evolution from that too. Which those schools, I would say, it's more more accurate, right? To look at it more as like, oh, it's about human relationships that's conditioning us rather than just sexuality. Sometimes sexuality, right?
Well, it's part of life,
part of
it,
life.
but it's not the whole thing.
It's not the whole thing. You can't reduce everything to it. Like he was reducing everything.
It's very.
It's problematic.
What would you recommend for people who would like to look into transpersonal psychology? What
Like a
authors?
book?
Yeah. What
Yeah,
authors?
probably the most kind of respected authors in the field are people like Ken Wilber, who came up with what's called integral theory, which tries to, again, like integrate everything, basically. But that's a good author. That's probably the person that I got exposed to that got me into training.
That's very Jungian.
He definitely talks about Jung. It's very expansive. His worldview is very expansive. There's a Stan Groff, who is like one of the pioneers of actually psychedelic research, right? Done tons of LSD sessions once it was legal, right? So he has his whole cartography of consciousness. Some other authors are like Jorge Ferrer. It's more of like integrating more postmodern issues, like multicultural issues, into transpersonal perspectives and theories. Another one, Michael Washburn. So these are some of the kind of respected authors in the field. It's an evolving field, right? So it's kind of open, evolving. And I think if you look at the history of psychology, right, you have Freud, base, right, instincts, sexuality, right, and then you have more like these interpersonal psychological theories come out, attachment theory, things like that. Then you have something like cognitive psychology, cognitive behavioral therapy, right? Now, right, even in the mainstream, now you're starting to see like mindfulness, which is starting to get a little bit of the spiritual in there. Things like DBT and like ACT, these sort of therapies are starting to have more of a spiritual focus, right? So I think the field is evolving towards more the transpersonal integral, right? Transpersonal studies like peak experiences, spiritual experiences, experiences beyond the ego, right? That's transpersonal. And the integral studies the whole spectrum of development, right? From when we're babies all the way up to the peak developmental stages of being a human, right? So transpersonal integral, I think, is the future of psychology in a lot of ways.
And psychedelic therapy, I think, actually, that's what it is.
So psychedelic therapy has always been a central part of transpersonal psychology, because when people take psychedelics, they often have spiritual, religious experiences. They often have experiences beyond the ego.
Which is transpersonal.
Right. That's it.
You know,
Yeah.
that's the future of psychology. I mean, you're on the right path, because that's where it is. I mean, people, those professionals, I mean, the field in general will just die out.
I don't think it'll die out. I think what'll happen, it gets, so just like, we had a conversation the other day. So you noticed, just in your life, the more experience you had, the bigger your map and your worldview became, right?
Yeah, of course.
So think of that in your own experience, right? So that's what I call a developmental trajectory, right? So think of it culturally. So as a culture, I'm talking more about American culture, right? Some other cultures might be very different. But as a culture, America, as a collective, it's like people are born into more of this materialist, reductionist, culture. So then they're dealing with their instincts initially, right? They're dealing with their relationship with their parents or siblings, right? And as that continues, so those pieces are important, actually. Freud for sexuality is important, right? Attachment theory for interpersonal relationships is important. Understanding the mind and irrational versus rational thoughts, that's important, right? Understanding the emotions, right? So I don't think they're going to disappear. They have valuable contributions, actually, right? We want to take what's good there, but let go of what's not good, right? And then you get to humanistic psychology. That's looking at like optimal human functioning, right? And then like Maslow was the one who's Maslow's another author, right?
Who is that?
Abraham Maslow.
Last name, how you spell?
Maslow.
Maslow. That's a Russian guy.
I don't know.
Maslow?
Maslow.
Okay.
He could be.
Okay.
But what he was studying is like peak experiences. What do people experience when they're like, great?
Yeah.
But then
Exaltation.
And then through studying that, what he started seeing is that they're having transpersonal being experiences, right? You have this whole notion of like being needs, right? So if you look at that arc, what the problem is, right, and we're seeing even in the culture today, right, like if the culture is only at a certain level of development, it's going to stop people there. So right now it's kind of at this like material reductionistic pinnacle. But people get there, it's like, okay, I got the house, I got the car, I have the wife and kids, right, the kind of prototypical American dream or something. I have money, whatever. And then it's like, I'm not really that happy, right? Isn't that fulfilling, right? So that's hitting the wall of the culture, and then now what we see happening is like people are going like, what's more? So psychedelics, right? Spirituality, deeper religious experience, all of those is what's more, right? And we see, you see it in your work, I see it in my work. Once people start breaking past that, breaking past just like the individual ego development into more of these transpersonal experiences, it's life transforming. It's like, this is what life's about. It's what existence is about, right? So that's the arc I see. So in some ways I'm like, okay, yeah, everything that came before was necessary. right?
It's a building block in a way,
Building
yes.
blocks, yeah.
Yes.
Like
You
even
just-
for yourself, right? Each of your experience before
Yes.
here, those are all necessary.
Yes.
Right?
They made me.
They made you.
You know,
right?
so in that sense, yes,
Yeah.
there is space for Freudian school thoughts,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just we need to kind of grow. It's like I'm not what I was before.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
you know, I learn from my experiences, I grow through that, and I kind of let go of things that doesn't
That's
serve
right.
anymore.
That's right.
That's the same thing you need to apply in a bigger scale.
That's right. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
like that. You know, here
Yeah.
we have a more advanced
Yeah.
worldview,
Yeah.
more advanced understanding of human psyche.
Yeah.
It's beyond that.
That's right. Yeah.
But that's where the dogma come in.
Yeah.
That's what religious.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
the problem. It's a dogma.
fundamentalism dogma is going to hurt development
Of
wherever,
anything.
anything.
Religious or psychology.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you need to bypass that.
You have to be
And
open-minded.
open-minded and build on that.
Yeah,
You know, so
Yeah.
but so you see definitely a kind of a division between mainstream psychology and transpersonal
Yeah, yeah.
psychology. That they're not friends, obviously, because
No,
like,
no.
there's like serious,
There's
dog-
bias, there's like condescension, there's contempt
from those guys.
from those guys.
It's
Yeah,
like, no, you
because they're
guys
in
are-
the establishment, and the reason why, and here I want to be like sensitive to those people, right? The reason why there's the bias, right, of these people is like they're looking at the history of dogmatic religion, right? And they're projecting that onto the trans person.
But they don't see that.
They don't see that. They don't really understand it because really I would say they have to, like we've talked about this, they have to have personal experience, otherwise they think it's just bullshit, basically.
Delusion.
Delusion.
It's just like it's a diagnosis.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's a religious dogma trying to get in the field of scientific psychology. Right?
Yes.
That's the bias.
Yes.
But then, in
well, the
transpersonal,
moment you take a psychedelics, you jump the boat.
yeah, exactly.
You're already there. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, I interviewed some people for the book, and like, that's like a lot of people actually were more reductionistic materialists,
And then they just converted.
and then they work with psychedelics, and it explodes it because then you're getting direct experience that
Yeah.
doesn't really conform
doesn't
to
fit.
that paradigm, right?
Doesn't fit.
Like, yeah, you're
But
getting
that's exactly where the work is. Like, to bring that more to the surface.
Yeah.
This kind of people who were
yeah.
dogmatic,
Yeah.
had experience, and now they are not. They're open-minded.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what you show. That's
Yeah.
the bridge.
Yeah,
That's
that
how you
is-
get people from that group into this group
That's right.
and evolve.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
right. That's right. And if someone's at that developmental like place, and that they're not dogmatic, they won't get stuck there, right? Say someone is an open-minded atheist reductionist. That's okay. Yeah, be an open-minded atheist reductionist as long as you're open-minded. Then do meditation, do the spiritual practice, take the psychedelic, right?
Read Siddhartha.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It was an important book, actually, in my
yeah.
Siddhartha. I like.
Okay.
It's like one of these important books that you read.
Yeah, totally. So, if someone's open-minded, there's no problem. It's when people get dogmatic, then development stops.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it. You
Even,
become,
even for us,
I mean,
right?
you
If,
just-
if we get dogmatic right now in whatever world that we have, then our development's going to stop. But if we're continually open, learning, like more experience and information flowing,
You know, the knowledge is flowing.
the flow of life is of more complex forms of organization. So, like, if you look, and actually Ken Wilber does a good job of, like, mapping this. He looks at, like, large scale cultures. He looks at the individual. He has, like, these 4 quadrants, right? Inner, outer, individual, and collective, right? So you're looking at these 4 quadrants, and he looks at it through time, and what you see is that life goes from simple forms of organization to more and more complex forms of organization.
Yeah, McKenna was talking about that.
McKenna, yeah.
Yeah, it's very
similar.
much.
Yeah, McKenna is similar. Absolutely. Yeah, he's another good one, right?
Yeah.
very like transpersonal.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Yeah.
The kind of, yeah, I like McKenna.
Yeah, very open-minded thinker.
That's what he was talking about,
Yeah.
single cells evolve in the complexity.
That's right.
It's like, and it's like going into total complexity,
Yeah.
into some kind of,
Like uber unity,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
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 So he understood it very well.
Yeah.
Know.
Totally.
That's why he was following young.
Oh,
He
he
liked
was
young.
he liked young.
Yeah, he liked young. Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard some of his lecture. He was speaking of him like in a very good, positive way.
Yeah.
He actually had one video when he spoke to Young and Society.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Whoa.
the guy, and he was like on the stage, like, guys,
Yeah.
you should be preaching me, it's the kind of
yeah.
thing. But it was very good talk, and
Yeah.
bright guy,
Yeah.
like, you were a thinker.
Yeah.
That's the kind of an archetype of a thinker.
Yeah.
McKenna,
Totally.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Like open-minded, integrating different knowledge sources.
everything, yes, like aware of many things,
Yeah.
bringing it all through
Yeah.
his own understanding. I mean, that's my way too.
Yeah.
It's like that's how I learn myself.
Yeah.
It's my background is like Eastern spirituality, seeking for truth and meaning in my life, and then psychedelics and plant medicine. So it's all like that's very similar to how I approach reality. It's
Yeah.
like I don't just take things for granted. It's
Totally.
like I take it and I kind of filter it through my own experience and
Yeah.
understanding, and see how it's all like where it's all fit, in a bigger
Yeah.
picture, and then
Totally.
kind of I come to my own truth,
Yep.
That's
right. Yeah.
That's the growth process.
Yeah.
That's the
Exactly.
process of self-growth for
Yeah.
me, So it's very, very much. That's why I like Terence, because it's a similar approach.
Yeah.
It's
Totally.
like it's not.
Absolutely.
I can see myself in him,
Yeah.
reading psychedelics,
Yeah.
traveling, talking,
Yeah.
learning, contemplating, critical thinking.
Yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
very good approach. It's a very healthy approach
Yeah.
to finding truth.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
know?
Yeah. Evolving, growing.
Yeah, definitely. It's like we need more people like that, and more, and that's the energy we need.
Yeah,
It's
that
like,
is
it's the energy
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's like, do we have any like archetype for that? I mean, what is his like?
Oh, his archetype?
Yeah.
There probably is. I don't know what it would be exactly.
Because the energy is like, it's objective, it's out there. You know what I mean? I connect
Yeah.
to the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Like
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they call that, like in Jungian psychology, they call that constellating an archetype. Meaning, for example, if I'm in the spiritual seeker mode, there's an archetype in the universe of the collective unconscious of that, and then it's constellated in my particular psyche, right? Or like a synthesizing thinker mode, right? There's an archetype in the cosmos of that, and then you're sort of bringing it into your particular psyche.
Yes, that resonates.
Yeah. But actually, my big thing, even like yesterday, what came through is like, I think the next stage is going to be like groups. Like having highly like evolved groups working together, right? Creating a lot of coherence and synergy. Because I think if you look developmentally too, like a lot of Western culture is about the the archetype of the individual hero, right? But then you know what you start seeing, like even recently in like media and stuff. Think of like the Avengers, right? The Avengers are about all these different people, very different, who are highly evolved and skilled in their particular
Fields,
fullness,
yeah.
right? And then you bring people like that together for some higher purpose,
yeah.
right? I think that's what I'm sensing right now is emerging spiritually, is like getting highly evolved groups of people together for a higher calling and purpose, right?
Well, it's certainly needed.
Yeah. Otherwise, like,
I mean,
let's face it, the planet
Yeah.
the planet will survive, but humans won't
Yeah,
survive
exactly.
on the planet.
Yeah, these mountains are not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
We are.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. exactly.
So maybe we can talk about your book. Would you like to share about the book? What is the book about? And
Yeah. So it's a book I've been working on like 4 to 5 years now, and it's really about what we've been talking about, right? You have this reductionist materialist paradigm that psychology has inherited, and it's infiltrated like the DSM I told you, the schizotypal personality disorder. It's infiltrated like just the field in all these different ways. Not everybody, right? I'd say there's many psychologists now that are open to spirituality, right? But we're still in a transition phase. Still, the dominant paradigm is this reductionist paradigm, right? So I go over different forms of evidence, like near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, like telepathy, remote viewing, to show, like, okay, we're living in a bigger universe than this paradigm accounts for. And then from there, I'm looking at what are all the growth technologies out there that could really help people. So I give like the reader a sort of system to understand how to use these different growth technologies. I go through some major ones out there, and then basically I give them a system where they can understand, like, even if I'm writing about one and they're into a different one, once they're into that different one, they'll see, like, okay, is this really helping me transform, right? Really develop to these higher forms of being and consciousness and what have you. So that's it in a nutshell, I would say. And I talk to you and different people in different fields, and that's what I'm actually very interested in, is like, so we have a lot of people on the planet right now that are trying to do good, right? And actually, humanity in general, I think at essence,
inherently it's good.
like people know, like, okay, be kind, right? And then like compassion's good, right? And like being kind of balanced is good, right? These sort of basic intuitive knowings that humans have. But the problem right now is, because of these dominant cultures out there, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of difficult experiences that people haven't fully digested. So that's what I'm kind of talking about in the book. It's like, okay, I get it. You have these things. So these are the kind of ways from like trauma theory, from like these different approaches that you can use. And then once people use those to kind of free that up, then they can open up, right, to the more transpersonal dimensions, these more integral, holistic dimensions of what it means to be part of existence, right? And not just like, sometimes even with psychedelics, right, people have these kind of peak experiences, and then once they go back to their lives, those old patterns come back, right, gets really tight again, right? So my view is more, I'm very interested in like the integration process too of psychedelic experiences, right? Because I see that, and that's what I like about the psychedelic assisted therapy, is that it's like you have the pre, and then you have the psychedelic experience, and then you have the post-integration, right? If you're kind of along there the whole way, then it becomes less about just the psychedelic experience, but the overall development of the human, right? The overall development of the individual, but also culture. So I'm really fascinated, like, how can groups, right, come together? And I'm involved with like intentional communities and things like that. So that's kind of like the thing that I've been focusing on more recently, is like, how do you seed these very high-level intentional communities? So the community, or give an example, say you had like 8 people living here that you've been working with for a long time, that's developed at like a high level, then the community is holding a high level of collective consciousness. So then a new person comes in, right? Because you have the
elevated.
It elevates them, right? It elevates them. So.
The only danger with these intentional communities that often they turn into cults. So I have to watch for that. I was one of those.
Yeah.
in my first book.
Yeah. I would say, like, I know the word cult gets kind of thrown around. Like, from what I've seen around cults, what goes wrong is usually there's a central figure, and then that central figure is sort of manipulating people, right? Mm-hmm. So what I think we need, and this is more like the
has to be decentralized. Yeah.
Decentralized, right? Even we see that with like blockchain, crypto.
Yeah,
right? It's like culturally that decentralization is healthy.
It's healthy,
right?
Absolutely.
So same with groups, right? Like having a more decentralized organizing principle where everybody, I think the Avengers is a good example, actually, right? It's like, okay, people are leading in different ways at different times, right? Because you want everybody to be empowered, right? If you get stuck in like, oh, this is the sort of guru, I'm less, and you get stuck in I'm less, right? And the guru gets stuck in I'm superior, then you have a cult. Then it's problematic. Yeah. But and I would say if there are more leader figures, then if they're embodying like, no, let me lift you up, right? Let me lift you up.
Yeah, it's empowering others.
Yeah.
We get empowered by empowering others.
That's right.
That's how it was like.
It's like servant leadership, right?
Yeah. Through service, you achieve higher understanding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's very good. So how was, maybe that's how we wrap it up, with your experience here? How was Huachuma for you? How was staying with us, and what did you learn? What did you see?
I opened up a big thing. If I start saying that, I get back to the States, they're going to lock me up in like a mental ward or something. But incredible. I've loved the journey so far and being with you. I love your kind of humor and energy, down to earthness, right? And the journeys have been incredible. I can't even put it in words. Whole other dimensions of reality opening up. Beings like interacted with me. I mentioned yesterday these kind of astral shamans, right? So an interesting thing about that is about 3 weeks before coming to Peru, I had this dream, and it was like a shaman. His face was painted with like black, like a square, something like that over his left eye. And he was like talking to me, trying to like teach me about them. I'm like, oh, okay. Like he was giving me some guidance, right? And then, so I told you I did a Huachuma ceremony before, like a couple weeks before. And it was really powerful, really opening. And then I saw in their, like, one of their places you stay, there's a picture of that exact same face that I saw in the dream, right? So that's one piece. I was like, whoa, that's really weird. Yeah. And then yesterday, right, I'm working with a medicine, and one of my friends actually has described this to me. Like, he starts entering a different, like a Huachuma realm, right? It's similar to the physical world, but it's not exactly the physical world. It's like an energy realm, right? So then I start entering that, and then I start hearing like there's like something talking to me, and then it's talking in a British accent. I'm like, oh, that's weird, right? And he goes like, I'm talking in a British accent, so you know it's not your own mind, right? So
that's smart.
Yeah, it was smart. It's like, oh, that's really. That's I was like, whoa, that's weird. And then he was saying like, and he was made of like green light, and they were like made of green and white light, and he was saying like, tell people that you're like meeting us. We want people to come here. Because we have, what I saw is that they're connected with like an infinite energy, healing energy, infinite. They're saying like, everyone can come here. We have an infinite amount of healing energy to heal everybody on the planet.
It's like sunlight.
Yeah, it's like sunlight, right? It's like
it's
endless.
From there.
Yeah, it's like endless, right? And he was telling me, like, he said, I've been working with you and your friend Mona for weeks. We've been working with the both of you for weeks before coming. And my friend Mona, every night she was working with ayahuasca down in the jungle. I think it was almost like every night for like 2 to 3 weeks, she was having shamans come into her dreams and like teaching her things, preparing her for her journey. Right? So these shamans were like, "Oh yeah, we're working with you and Mona." And even when I was in Iquitos, it was weird, right? I was just like, this is before any ceremonies or anything, so beyond the psychedelics, right? This is like reality, right? I'm just resting there, and like I woke up, and some shaman was doing some healing on me, some astral shaman. I was like, whoa, that's weird. Like, what the hell's that? You know? And then he was like, oh yeah, we've been working with you. And they did some sort of like initiation, and I'm like, oh shit, like, what Sergey did, like the Huachuma Baptist, it was like a real thing. They're like welcoming me into their like, you know, clan or something. And I was just like, wow, this is otherworldly stuff.
No kidding, you know. It's way beyond holding hands and playing the guitar, you know. You know? Oh, it's a typical, well, like what you just described, it's a typical schizotypical discussion. You know, for those guys, like we would lose this audience right here. You know, they will stop watching. You know, and too bad for them. You know?
Totally.
Because that's where the real meat and potatoes is. You know, and that's
you have to have the curiosity, right? It's more like, and you know, I see that probably my role is to be a bridge builder. Mm-hmm. I've kind of gotten that, right? Meaning, I went through all the schooling, right? Mm-hmm. I can sort of play that game, right? I know that reality of how to like diagnose all sorts of things, right? And I can shift my consciousness into that too. Right? I can shift my consciousness in a very grounded, you know, this world type perspective. But I can also shift my consciousness into these other dimensions of reality where there are different types of intelligence that want to heal us, they want to help us, they want to like help us grow as spiritual beings and humans, right? So I think the more people who are very grounded and rational speak of these things, and this is probably why they're telling me, share this, right? Share these things, it's like, okay, maybe that stuff isn't just crazy. Maybe there's something there. And the reality is, these different indigenous shamanic, right, cultures, this has been their reality, right? And it's not like pre-modern, right? It's not just pre-modern, meaning like, oh, modern is what's true, and that pre-modern is some old superstition, right? There's a whole like developmental trajectory there too, right? So you have pre-modern, you have modern, which is more like reductionistic atheism, and then you have postmodern, which is more multiculturalism, and then you have like integral perspectives, which is more like holistic views of the planet, right? All the cultures. So we're, you know, it's all part of the process. So I think people out there that maybe have a more reductionistic paradigm, it's kind of like, come to some place like here, right? Like, yeah, you don't force anything onto people. It's just like, hey, let's just kind of like drink medicine, hang out in nature. Yeah, it's very like non-dogmatic, and let's talk.
Totally, I don't impose my views on anyone. I mean, I'm open in sharing if you want to hear, but if not, then just listen to the birds all day. That's fine, you know.
Totally.
But you said something very important now. It's about really recognizing what's your role.
Yeah.
And playing it.
That's right.
You know, that's where your calling is. That's where your purpose is, to realize what is and be that.
Yeah.
Totally. You know, so that's in itself. It's a path.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, just recognizing what you're good at and what you should do. You know, I see myself in a similar position. For being in the role I am, it's mainly probably it's due to my sincere seeking that was always there, you know.
but it's also because of my background, and
Yeah.
I'm like a very down-to-earth guy, you
Yeah.
know. I'm like an evidence-based.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
I'm not an easy believer in
Totally,
things. Like
totally.
I want to see more.
Yeah,
I want
exactly.
to get to the core of things.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
okay, and then say, you know, it's like
Yeah.
if I speak about metaphysics,
Yeah.
there is something there to look at because I'm not just easily believing anything. You know what I
totally.
mean?
Yeah, you need experience.
I need
right?
experience.
Yeah.
It's experiential for
Yeah.
me. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I born in atheist society,
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
like the whole background
Yeah.
is like kind of provides that.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, guys, you know, I'm coming from here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm telling you, there's something there to look. So
Yeah.
maybe you want to look at that. You
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
So it's like a different, a little bit backgrounds, but also
Yeah.
there's similarity between
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I think that's really good, though, right? Because I think, say people, say you or I grew up in a society that just believed in all these things.
Well, they
Forever.
wouldn't have as much value.
We wouldn't have the, like I know because we have some similar cultural backgrounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
That you get certain aspects of my experience in worldview, right?
Yeah.
And we can relate from
Yeah.
there, right? So that's what I think people need, right? People need others, guides, right, that can do that with them. Because if not, right, even, sometimes I sit with, like, other groups and, like, maybe traditional Shipibo or something like that, and I'm like, the worldview, I feel like they don't fully get my worldview. Right?
They're not.
Right, they don't fully
It's-
get my
it's a
world.
very,
and it's-
very- there's a gap, cultural gap. It's
there's a
huge,
cultural,
huge.
there's a big cultural gap,
Uh-huh.
right? So it's like having mentors, right? Having people that we can kind of connect with that have similar cultural backgrounds. I
It's very
think
helpful.
It's essential in a lot of ways.
People who also understand other cultures.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, like you're a good
indigenous,
example. You lived in, right,
4 countries.
4 countries. Right?
Travel.
Yeah. Same with me,
Indigenous
right?
places. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like I'm a combination of many things.
Yeah, even right,
know.
like your wife, your family, right? You're
they
bridging
prove it.
different cultures, right?
Totally. It's like I'm immersing through it.
Yeah.
also.
And,
My
and
life
that's
is
what we
fluid,
need. Yeah.
But I'm Westerner.
Yeah.
I understand your mind.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
in my case, it's very different because I'm a totally like non-academic.
Yeah, yeah.
Like I'm like actually bashing those guys. I mean,
Okay.
sometimes maybe too much. I mean, it's coming through the books. It's like it's like I respect. It's not like everything is bad. I respect effort. I respect dedication.
Yeah.
I respect people willingness to learn for
Yeah.
sure, and there is not all bad there. It's
Yeah,
just the
yeah.
dogmatic side of it is
Yeah.
that I'm like have problem with that's why I never took this road.
Yeah.
I thought about anthropology and psychology.
Yeah.
That was the two things that I was attracted
Yeah,
in.
yeah.
If anything, it
Yeah,
would be
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it. So, but
Yeah.
then I thought like, how much garbage I will have to put in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, do I really want to do that,
Yeah,
or I
yeah.
just jump straight into
Yeah.
the realm of direct experience,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
kind of my
Yeah, yeah. It
side
depends on
of
your
story.
calling, right?
Yeah,
Depends on your
exactly.
calling.
But I'm attracted to learning. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm self-taught.
Yeah.
Reading and
Yeah.
it's been big in my life. I mean,
Yeah.
I certainly recommend people read books.
Yeah.
It's just that's how I learn things.
Yeah.
Books and psychedelics
Yeah, yeah.
and contemplations.
Yeah.
That's what makes me up, and life
Totally.
experiences.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, of course.
that's it. So. I'm not against formal education. I'm against closed-mindedness
Yeah.
and dogmatism. You know?
Totally.
So if you can bypass that,
Yeah.
then you can find good things
Yeah.
there.
Totally.
You know,
Yeah.
if you have the patience, if you have the time, if you have
Yeah.
the resources, and we need both people. We need
Yeah.
people like you, and we need people like me.
Yeah, of
because
course.
we represent two
Yeah.
different kind of two different paths,
Yeah, yeah.
which unite at a certain
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
of understanding.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah.
which points out to objectivity of things.
Yeah.
Because it's a different trainings.
Yeah, yeah.
But we come to the similar conclusions.
Yeah.
So that just
Converging
yeah,
efforts,
it's like it's a convergence of paths.
Yeah, yeah.
that shows that, hey, there is something there. This is
Yeah.
not schizotype, or whatever you call that thing. Schizotypal, man. It's just like, that's crazy. Things like that I have a problem with.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
me too. Me too. It's like crazy, right? Like
You are crazy,
Then you
man.
can't own your own experience. Even like for the book, I was interviewing people who have these experiences of people who've passed, right? And their communications, but then they don't want to share it with people because they're afraid of being labeled
Well,
crazy,
schizophrenic, or whatever, you know what I mean?
So that's a problem. It's kind of a big problem.
It's a cultural thing.
Yeah, it's a culture. It's
You know, your culture does not allow.
It's an ethnocentric bias, right?
You know?
Yeah, it pathologizes it.
Absolutely. I write about this in my second book, The Masculine Confession.
Yeah,
Breaking Through the Walls of Delusion. This is like purely about masculine in the scientific community in the first half of 20th century, and then
really? Wow.
they ban it, and then it's like then I bring the shamanic approach. I mean, it's all there. It's my shortest book, but it's important book. You know, it just shows you how limited.
yeah,
How limited the mainstream understanding,
yeah.
of. So, okay, so what would you like to maybe add at the end of this interesting talk? And
Well, I had a question for you because I
Yeah.
heard a story yesterday,
Okay.
and I'm just curious about
Okay.
it. Right, so here you are, right? You're from the Ukraine. You lived in the States. What was it? You said 4 countries.
Yeah,
Peru.
Ukraine, Israel,
Oh, Israel
States,
too.
Peru.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've lived in 4 different countries. Your wife's Peruvian. Your kids are a mix of Ukrainian, and Peruvian, and you're a Huachumero here. And Mersu shared with me like there's a point where someone shot like I don't know, was it a physical dart or an astral dart at you, and it hit like a tooth that you had and exploded or something. So I'm curious just about that, like the cultures here and how you feel like you're accepted or not accepted.
Well, that's a whole new conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, it happened when I came here.
Oh, really?
Right in the beginning, I think it was maybe first ceremony I led.
Oh, really?
It was my birthday, my 33rd birthday. So I led the first ceremony, and we were in the ruins up in the mountains, and I had my jaguar tooth from the jungle that I brought. And I was just sitting there while everybody was doing things. And there was a second, then I just saw, it was very fast, like a bullet. I just saw something flying into my chest, like really in the blink of an eye. It's like something there, and the next thing I hear, pop. I mean, my jaguar tooth just popped. Just pop.
Wow.
I'm like, what? I mean, that's unreal. You know what I mean? It can't be. You know? I mean, I've heard the stories before, but it's one thing you hear the story, another thing you experience the story. And this is kind of how I learn. It's like, okay, there is a story. It happened. Call it what you want, man. But this jaguar tooth exploded for no reason after seeing something coming in. So that was a psychic attack. That was
it wasn't a physical dart. It was, but it exploded.
The physical object.
Wow.
That's the whole point. It's like that's the interesting thing. There was nobody there. I was by myself, looking like far, and it just was energy. Energy, just like bullet. So here in Peru, we call it darts. You know.
Yeah, I hear about that in the jungle too, right?
Oh, it's a real thing, totally. But before I thought, like, I don't know, man. Maybe it's just, maybe it's not real. Maybe people just talk. You know what I mean? I'm not believing easily things. You know, even when it comes from credible source, I'm still like, okay.
If you don't have direct
I
experience,
don't have the,
right?
it's like I don't know how to relate to this. It's like so I keep it somewhere between denial and believing.
It's like a hypothesis, right?
It's like, okay, can be. You know, but I'm not sure about it. But this is how I knew that it's real, man. Somebody shot at me, you know, and my tooth protected me because without that, maybe I would be dead because it was pretty strong. It was it's like a bullet coming into you.
Yeah.
It's like, pff, you're a bah. And Jaguar 2 just blew to pieces.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So that's a brujeria, what we call Peru. That's a black magic, you know. That's usually happen when people, well, some shamans are jealous of success of others, you know. It's just, and because I was gringo, because I was white, so I was confronted by some people
Yeah.
who told me, hey, you know, you get out of here. It's like it's our job to do medicine.
Nice.
And I'm like, man, but I've been called.
Yeah.
You know, it's not up to you to decide. It's up to the spirit who, you know, I'm just a serving. I'm a servant. I'm just following the calling. So
Yeah.
that was the, you know, in the
tension.
beginning, the tension. Among some people. Other people are open-minded.
They are.
You know, it's not everybody like
Yeah.
this. It's just like, you know, this dogmatic. It's just
Yeah.
another dogma
Oh, I see.
that manifests itself in that
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
among some indigenous population.
I see. So some indigenous groups were very welcoming. it
Yeah,
sounds like,
I
and
have
other-
teachers like
yeah.
Shapibo and others like, you know,
Yeah.
it's like I have blessings from many
Yeah,
people,
many
you know.
yeah.
It's like, but some didn't.
Yeah.
It's just the same
I
thing. This is like
see.
the Freudian and Jungian
Yeah,
society.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Totally.
no, that's not. It's like,
That's not acceptable.
it's not
'cause
acceptable,
white
but
or
that's the whole thing. It shows their limited understanding
something.
of spirit
Yeah.
that they claim to represent better.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to spirituality,
Yeah.
there is no racism.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's about
spirit
the
doesn't
person's
care.
spiritual development,
That's
moral
it.
integrity. These are
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's like, can you carry
Yeah.
it on?
Yeah.
Then carry it on.
Yeah.
How you look, nobody cares.
Yeah, yeah.
You care because
Yeah.
you're a racist idiot. That's it. But spirit doesn't.
Yeah.
It's like you feel the calling, you're here to serve, do it.
Yeah.
Carry it out, carry the fire
Yeah.
through centuries. That's
Yeah.
how the fire came to us.
Yeah.
Through the centuries, and you know,
Yeah.
thanks to many people who were
Yeah.
carrying, you know, this. So, and I met people in Native American who
Yeah.
were fighting for the rights of white people to use peyote. I respected them a lot because that's, you know, it's like, hey, they entitled too. We're all humans, and this is a gift from the Mother Nature. It's not does not belong to a group of people. It belongs to hearts, to clean hearts, to
Yeah.
good hearts,
Yeah,
to humanity. You know, these are gifts of humanity. It's not like, oh, your skin is brown, you eat a cactus. So my skin is white, so I drink vodka. I mean, you know, that's just cultural stupidity. You know what I mean? It's like, no, I want to eat peyote too. And Huachuma.
Yeah. I've heard too with the peyote though it's more like because it's like endangered. There's a lack of it.
Yes,
so
yes, no,
kinda-
I understand.
I can understand.
I
that
totally
piece,
understand
yeah.
that, and I support that
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. It's an important cultural, you know, heritage.
Yeah.
But there is other way.
Yeah.
My personal solution to this: legalize growing the medicine for people. Grow
Yeah.
your medicine and eat your medicine. Do
Yeah.
not put
Take
pressure
yeah.
on the wild
Yeah.
when you know
Totally.
where they live is their territory. So
Yeah.
okay, respect
Yeah,
that.
yeah, totally.
But grow your own medicine
Yeah.
and eat your peyote.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? But the
Yeah.
culture does not allow that
Yeah,
because
yeah.
if you do that, you go to jail.
Yeah.
So it's like, so what do you want me to do?
Totally.
I don't want to drink vodka. You know what I mean? It's like, and I understand both sides. Okay,
Yeah.
grow your medicine. That's just one solution.
Yeah.
And, you know, do this.
Yeah.
So that's just dogma.
Yeah.
That's just like dogma. It's a serious problem. That's why, you know, in my books I speak about this. It's like through my own understanding. It's like, guys, this is the problem.
Yeah.
It's just, dogma was turn religion into assassination campaign. You know, that's what dogmatic Christianity is dangerous. Dogmatic Islam is
Yeah.
dangerous. Dogmatic Judaism
Yeah.
is dangerous.
Dogmatic anything.
Dogmatic Buddhism is
Yeah.
dangerous.
Dogmatic communism, right?
It's all bad. It's
Yeah.
like this is where your mind kind of gets shut down,
Yeah.
and that's it. And you just
Yeah.
led by certain ideology. So an ideology is dangerous.
Yeah.
It's like there is no living knowledge in it.
Yeah.
It cannot evolve. It cannot progress. It's just kind of, it's just stagnation
Yeah.
of ideas.
Yeah. Yeah.
and that becomes, militant in one way or another, and that's why we fight.
Yeah.
That's why people fight right now.
Yeah.
It's like if people come here doing medicine, I had Muslims, Jews, Christians, Armenian, Turks, all together.
Yeah.
And we're just like, man, we're just laughing.
Yeah.
And this stupid division that we have, it's like, guys, we're like same. We are similar. It's like, here we are.
Yeah.
What's that all about? This is like completely crazy.
Yeah,
talking about crazy, that is crazy.
Kill each other over a difference in ideas or something.
Or skin color or hair. You know what I mean? It's that this is just so dumb. It's like, guys, this is like primitive in its core.
Yeah.
This is like chimpanzee kind of mentality. Like, what are you doing? So you drink Huachuma, that all gone.
Yeah.
It just like melts away all this false divisions and unifying people.
Yeah.
And it's like, you understand how foolish all that and
Yeah,
how unnecessary the worldly trouble are
Totally.
because of dogmatism, but that's how you manipulate one group against another.
Yeah.
So the medicine, any medicine, not just Huachuma, any medicine will do that. They just kind of dissolve boundaries and and you just like see the world as it is. And that's why psychedelics are illegal, because they do that to people. They unite people. And the powers that be don't want unity, because then you cannot manipulate one group against another. It's a politics thing. It's like it comes back to politics control. It's like that's why psychedelics were always kind of suppressed through the history. And same for religious organization, it's not good, because they don't like you to have a direct access to divine. They want to control that access through them. So you can't just like pop up and it's like, no, you come to us and we pray for you, we talk for you to our manager, up there in some authority in the sphere, in the higher sphere. But what psychedelics do, they just remove the middleman. They do the same thing that crypto does to the banking industry. It just removes the middleman and lets you directly to interact with one another. That's exactly the same thing. That's why both of them are not, well received by the establishment, because they give you freedom. That's it. That's it. They're non-aggressive. None of them are aggressive or dangerous to other people. They just give you freedom, and that is the danger to authority. That's it. So that's where we are. And it's not going to change, unless things change. You know what I mean? So that's kind of to wrap it all up. Anything else you would like to add, maybe, before we?
No, I don't
Nothing.
think so,
Just we talk about your book. We talk about your work. General. We talk about many things, actually. It was a good conversation. All right.
Totally.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for taking time to talk. And it was good. You were called here.
Cold?
You were called. You were saying that you were called to come here.
Oh, called.
Called,
I asked the
yeah.
medicine.
It's like the medicine sent you here for whatever reason. So
Totally.
So that's how you verify the truth of it. I mean, you follow the guidance, you follow the calling, and then you find that to be a very beneficial and right thing to do. So, Okay, well, have a good luck from now.
All right.
So when is your book out? What do you
I
think?
don't know. Probably 3 to 4 months.
Okay, so that's like end of this year, or kind of beginning of?
Probably end of this year.
Okay, so it's like there, almost there.
Almost there. It's
I
all
know,
kind of
I know,
written
and you will
out.
have relief. I published 4 books, man.
Yeah.
There is a point when you publish it. It's like you get such a
Just-
relief, man. It's like mission accomplished.
Yeah,
Yes. Now I
totally.
can just relax for a
Relax
while
around
until I write
a
more.
new
You know,
one.
No, write new one. It's good feeling.
Yeah.
It's like feeling of accomplishment,
Yeah.
feeling of
I have done this. It's like mission accomplished, you know.
Totally.
So it's a great time to celebrate.
Yeah.
So let us know when,
Okay.
and we can talk again, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
and
totally.
share
Yeah,
this
yeah.
book with our audience, you
Okay,
know,
awesome.
and put in other channels.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
channel is growing. And
Yeah.
All right, very good,
All
Kelly.
right.
All right.
All right, Sergey.
Okay.
Good talking.
Okay. It was great having you here.